You don't have to write this down. If you're a teacher, you'll know, probably this will look familiar as a KWL chart, where I'd like you to just think about some things that you think you know about Muslims and or Arabs, things maybe you're not so sure about, or things that, yeah, I've researched that and I know. And then I'd like you to think about some things that you'd like to ask tonight, either on the index card, you can just write it down, or feel free at any time, since it's just such a small group, to, just show me you're interested and I will call on you with any questions or comments you have to offer. And at the end, I'd like you to think about some things that you're going to go away with, aha moments, I didn't know that, or I don't agree with that, or I do agree with that. You'll probably find there's at least a few tidbits of information here about the Muslim Arabic population here in Upper Darby that you may or may not be familiar with. Some definitions so we're on the same page. These terms are used, unfortunately, interchangeably, but they make a big difference regarding who you're actually addressing and who you're talking about, so I'd like us to be kind of together on that. The first term I'd like us to talk about is Arab, and it refers to linguistic, cultural, ethnic, geographic, or political affiliation with the Semitic people from the Middle East. So you might hear someone self-identify as an Arab. I'm an Arab is probably how you'll hear it most often. The word Arabic can be a noun or an adjective. It can describe the language, like I speak Arabic, or you speak Arabic, or she speaks Arabic. Or it can be used as an adjective referring to a food type, or even an Arabic-speaking country. In my definition here, in my example at the bottom, you'll see I use it to refer to food. So putting Arab and Arabic together in a way that makes sense. My friend Reem is an Arab. She's from Syria, and she speaks Arabic and English. Reem and I eat Arabic food at the Lebanese restaurant. Another word that I'd like you to be familiar with is, or words I should say, are Islam and Islamic. So Islam is a noun, and it refers to the religion, like Christianity, or Judaism, or Buddhism, or Sikhism. The adjective is Islamic. Islam is the name of the religion, and it translates directly from Arabic as the submission to God's will. Islamic refers to anything associated with the religion of Islam. So it's, akin to saying Christian, like my Christian neighbor, or my Jewish father. An example of putting these into play would be Sarah practices Islam. She believes in the Islamic faith. So you could basically substitute, Islam with Christianity, and she believes in the Islamic faith with Christian faith, right? Or any other religion, for that matter. Another term I'd like you to become familiar with is the word Muslim, and that can refer to a person who practices the religion of Islam, or it can refer to a country or a style of dress maybe as an adjective. For example, by the way, Muslim means one who submits to the will of God. And whenever you hear like Islam, Arabic is a language that's based on roots, very heavily based on like the roots of words, and Islam means submitting to the will. Putting Muslim into play, Sarah is a Muslim because she practices the religion of Islam. And like I said, you could also use Muslim like an adjective. You might hear something like Iran is a Muslim country, or she's wearing a Muslim style of dress. Putting that all together, my friend John is not Arab, and he doesn't speak Arabic because he's American or Mexican or not from an Arab country. But he converted to Islam. Now he practices the Islamic faith and considers himself a Muslim. So if it ever gets confusing to you, all these different terms that kind of sound the same, which is why I think people use them interchangeably because they kind of sound alike with all the slur, at least that you say when you pronounce these words, just keep in mind that not all Arabs are Muslim and that most Muslims are not Arab. And kind of just keep coming back to that little mantra. And you'll catch a lot of people using the terms incorrectly, and if you're still like, well, I don't get it, you will. Give me a couple more slides. Sarah is a Muslim lady. Which one of these women could Sarah be? Any or all. Thank you very much, sir. Exactly. They could be any or all because, why? It's a religion, right? It's a religion. It's not a race. And I think, or an ethnicity, or a way to self-describe, to say that you're from a certain part of the world, right? You could be a Muslim living in Canada. You could be a Muslim living in Ecuador, you could be a Muslim living in a part of a country in Africa, right? It's just a religion that a person could convert to if inclined. So before we get more into Islam, you might be saying like, oh, well, what are you talking about Christians for? Well, there's a point to this. I'd like to see if you agree with these statements. Christians don't drink alcohol, smoke, gamble, or dance. Christians have very large families. Christians don't watch movies or TV. They listen to only religious music. They go to church every Sunday. And they dress very conservatively, and females wear dresses or skirts, but no pants or shorts. And no one wears a bathing suit when they go swimming. So are these things true about Christians?
Yes and no.
I see head shaking, and I see yes and no. Exactly. Okay, so why do you say yes and no? If somebody wouldn't mind explaining yes and no, if you're of that persuasion.
Well, there's different branches of Christianity. And I know when my mother-in-law was married, she married a gentleman who was a strict Methodist, and they did not listen to the radio or television on Sundays. It was only reading the Bible. And you also have branches of Christianity who, some have very large families, who choose not to. It doesn't, all those statements are partially true for some, not for all.
Exactly. That's exactly the point of this particular slide. And actually, I'm getting married at a Methodist community in Ohio, and part of the, well, actually just the ceremony, not the reception. The reception's at a winery, but at the ceremony, it's a dry location, so there's no alcohol allowed on premises. And this is a Methodist Christian community, so thank you for that, for mentioning that. So those things, those statements are true of the Duggar family. Does anybody know the show? The
Yes.
Duggar family on TLC? Okay. I don't know. It's oddly appealing sometimes to me. I turn it on, I watch it, and then I get overwhelmed by the just sheer size of the family, and they're really organized for having so many kids, and it just gets overwhelming to shut it off. But the Duggar family adheres to a very fundamental form of Christianity, and I say fundamental not in a negative way, just they try to adhere to the Bible as strictly as possible, and they also have family rules that they created that they believe is part of fulfillment to their faith. So they don't do any of those things that were on the previous slide. But most of my Christian friends and family members, do not adhere to any of those statements, and yet they self-describe as Christian. So, like, why talk about the Duggars when we're talking about Islam? It's the exact same phenomenon with Muslims and with Islam. You're going to find people who try to adhere very strictly to their holy book and to the teachings of their mosque, depending on what mosque that is. Maybe it's a very conservative mosque, maybe it's a very liberal mosque. Then there's like the family unit, like what is your mom and dad and aunts and uncles and cousins, what do they believe? And it's like your own personal persuasion, how do you feel and how are you going to practice your religion? So it's the same thing with, with Islam, same exact thing.